Hi, Jason.
Hey, Kev.
For those watching, I'm Kevin Yank, the Director of Front-End Engineering at CultureAmp, and I wrote this blog post, Micro Front-End Strategy and Blueberry Muffins. I've got my friend Jason here to talk about it.
Yeah, so I'm Jason. I'm he, him, dad, etc. You over there. Yeah, I'm live in Perth, which is a mid-sized city on the west side of Australia, and we have been where Perth is like you can drive 20 hours, and the closest city is still Perth. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've been at CultureAmp for 4 years. I work in the front end ops team. So the whole time I've been here, I've never been building the features that our customers see. I've always been building the tools and the components that the rest of our teams use to build the features. So some of that's been our design system, and some of that is our tooling, like what I'm doing at the moment.
I
Yeah.
often introduce you to other people as someone who answered a job ad for Webpack expert.
Yes. The funny thing is, I think I built my first Webpack loader after watching a talk you gave about some developer experience. And then I wanted to replicate it. And I was like, I'm doing it in this language and it doesn't have Webpack. And then I went and did a loader. And then a few months later was like, you know what? I'm going to go work with that guy. It's worked out well so far. For the first year I was here, I was an individual contributor. And then at some point I said, hey, I reckon I'd like to try and lead a team. And since then, it's kind of been a progression of taking on more management responsibilities. And I still code, but one of the challenges at the moment is like how to gracefully let go of that and release things over to other people in the team for them to own and for them to succeed at, and for me to be okay with not getting my hands dirty in the code as often. So that's been a thing. But at the moment, a lot of what that looks like is talking to the teams that are our customers. So we're this team that we try to make the other 15 or so product teams move faster. So a lot of it is talking to them about their projects and understanding what they need, understanding what the pain points are. And often you get like vague noises of frustration, and what you should do with that is not obvious. Like, what's the technical solution, or what's the people solution, what's the process solution? And so probably my superpower at the moment is getting on a call with a team and opening a document and live screen sharing and just typing out their questions and trying to answer them, and then having something at the end where we've recorded the conversation and we've recorded what the pain points were, and we've agreed together on what a good thing going forward is. And then I prepare that into work for the team, put the issues in GitHub, and trust someone else to actually solve the problems. So.
Yeah. So how does that fit into the arc of your career so far?
I was always in smaller companies and closer to the product, the end users. So for several years before CultureAmp, I was in teams of 5 or less engineers, where every engineer was also half product manager, coming up with what the features should be. At one point, I even started my own startup and had a product called Today We Learned, and I built it, and I convinced one of my friends who was a school teacher to quit her job and come and be my co-founder. And we went and joined a startup accelerator and moved across the country. And it was a wild ride, but it turns out that it's hard to make money if you don't like talking to people and asking for money. And so we got some users using it for free, but we couldn't get anyone to pay for it in the end. And so that was a short-lived dream. And then I went and worked for another couple of companies that were small like that, but whereas very still thinking about the customer needs. But in both of those, like when I did my own startup, I built my own web framework to do that. And I really enjoyed that. And I had people in the open source community using it. And I enjoyed that part of it probably too much, when I probably should have used something off the shelf and just focused on building a product that would pay my bills. But I enjoyed that stuff. And then at the job before CultureAmp, again, small team, was building actual features, but there was just a lot of technical debt. And I kind of led them on this process of changing things and introducing better tooling and trying to improve the quality of the product through technical tooling and technical frameworks. And I think I had a good impact there. And then yeah, when I was on the lookout for a new job, the thought of a job where focusing on frameworks and tooling as the thing I get paid for was a bit irresistible. So yeah, I don't know what the next step for me is. I'm enjoying Culture Amp, and I feel like when I joined, the company was, I mean, you joined when there was only 20 people, but when I joined, it was, I think, about 150, maybe a few less. Now it's 700, so it's doubled and doubled again, and then
it's on its way to doubling again.
Yeah. And I feel like there's probably another couple of doublings again before I feel like I've done enough here. So I'm looking forward to it. It's a company where the size and the impact we want to have on the world means we've got a lot of growth to do, and I'm here for the journey. So at least that's the current plan. So.
Yeah. So I guess that's a good segue into why I wanted to chat to you about the blog post I just published about our front end engineering strategy, micro front ends strategy, and blueberry muffins. I see you as kind of being at the focal point of that question of how do we make Culture Amp's front end practice that was formed in a company that had fewer than 100 employees now has 700. What needs to change, and what do we need to do in order to make that go well, to keep everything working, to keep everyone feeling like their tools work for them, the systems they work in work for them, and that they understand what direction we're all meant to be pulling in. So you read the post. What stood out to you?
I mean, I read the post, and I've also read your sharing of internal stuff. I love the way you told the story of bringing other people along for the ride. It reminded me a lot of a book I read called Made to Stick, which is all about like creating sticky ideas. So coming up with an idea, instead of just presenting it in the most clinical language or the most accurate language, you present it in the stickiest language and what things stick in people's brains. And as I was reading it, I was appreciating the ways you didn't just have to come up with a strategy, you had to make the strategy stick. And muffins are sticky in multiple senses of the word.
Yeah. Oh, I should have gone for the raspberry and white chocolate. That's much stickier.
Blueberries are delicious.
Yeah. So that's the thought I end on, is like, if you've got something this multifaceted to communicate, try and find a unifying metaphor. And I guess that metaphor is the thing that I focused on to make it sticky. How do you see this strategy playing into the work and the day-to-day of the front-end foundations team that you lead?
Yeah. So when I joined Culture Amp, there was less than 10 front-end engineers. I can't remember exactly, but I would have known all of them by name and met them all in my first couple of weeks, whereas now I don't even know them all anymore, I think. And so we all worked in one code base. And when I joined, my first task, because I answered this job ad for a Webpack person, was make the Webpack build faster, because we've got 10 engineers and we've written too much code, and Webpack takes 10 minutes to build. And so I spent about a month doing all these things. And Kevin, you suggested half of the things to do, but then like putting in a spreadsheet, like the before time and the after time. And we tried switching this plugin to that plugin, and I tried tweaking this source map setting, and we did all this stuff. And, you know, I can't remember what the before and after times were. It would be interesting to dig the spreadsheet up, but it was something like, we reduced the Webpack builds from 7 minutes to 3 minutes, and hooray, project done, move on. And I think within 3 months, like the time I'd saved, just the amount of code in that repo had ballooned, and all of a sudden it was back up above where it was. And at its worst point, I think it was up at about 15 minutes. And then we said, okay, well, let's split the Webpack build into 6 separate builds that run concurrently. And we did all these tricks to do that. And then that blew out, and each of those 6 builds was taking 10 minutes. And at some point we gave up and we said, everyone working in one code base and compiling under one project is getting slow. And there was other problems other than just CI being slow, like technical debt. You'd make a change in your feature and you'd accidentally break a feature over in some other team's thing, and you wouldn't know about it.
Or just like upgrading to a new major version of a library was too big a job for any one engineer to
Yeah.
take on because they had to upgrade everyone else's code too.
The upgrade from Elm, was it 18 to 19?
Yeah.
We gave it to a new engineer, to Louis, who's the tech lead of our team now. And we was like, this should be a nice
we
quick
did that
job.
to Louis. I completely forgot that.
We thought it would be a nice quick job, and he rightly pointed out that we were very, very naive, and that was a multi-month effort. In fact, I think it was close to, we didn't spend 12 months of effort on it, but we came up with a system where we could do it partially, and it was 12 months before the job was done. So it was not the quick win for his first week that we hoped for. Yeah, the working in the monoliths was hard. So we split everyone up. But the other thing is, like, when there was only 10 people, we used to have our practice meetings and we'd all sit in the same room. And for the first few months I was in the office, and then after that I moved to Perth. But we'd all sit in the same room and we'd actually like know this is how they're handling errors from the network requests. This is how they're handling this accessibility problem. This is how and we knew it because there was plenty of time to talk and for everyone to talk about what they were doing. Whereas now at the scale we're at, there's so many teams doing so many things that by the time a problem has become apparent, there's 4 teams have 4 different solutions for it. And so trying to keep people aligned so that you can look at one code base and make sure something will work somewhere else, so you can build a shared component and trust that it will work in all the places. That gets harder and harder. And so creating, like, we've got the common components and we've got the common tooling, but creating a common framework does feel important. What goes into that framework is a really interesting question. I think Jakob, who's run the process, did this massive exploration of like, what are all the problems we could be solving, and trying to narrow it down to, and what do we actually want to solve? What are the things that are important for all the teams to be aligned on versus what are the things where it's okay for them to make up their own minds and do things differently?
Yeah. I feel like that's going to be a whole other blog post, our journey on choosing that framework.
Yes. Yeah.
But coming back to your team, like ultimately, like if the strategy is for us to be building in muffin-sized chunks of code, making, like, solving the problems that come out of that, distributed systems are not free.
Yes.
That sounds like that's the problem space that your team is going to be playing in for the next little while, at least.
Yeah, so like when we started, the first code base we built outside of our first monolith was like, first monolith, we've got 2 now, anyway. Yeah. But the first code base we built, it was like, how do we have the buttons from our design system in here? And then it goes, oh, there's all this like things that we didn't realize were implicit, like we need SAS because the design system uses that, and we need this special SVG thing for the icons in the design system, and we need some polyfill that makes our accessibility tricks for focus indicators work. And like there was just this massive list, and it took us like, I think the first one we did took us about 6 weeks to get a code base ready to use the design system shared components. But eventually we got good at that. And then there was like questions of, okay, and how do we share other code, stuff that's not in the design system, like a help center or a navigation bar, which is on all the pages in our app. And so we set up GitHub package registries, and we set up workflows for teams to be able to publish packages so they could have the navigation bar package. And so we had to learn how to do that. Like, what does it mean to have a registry? How do we make sure all our repos can get the registry, all of our users, like our engineers can get it, and all of our CI pipelines can get it? And so we did all of that so that multiple code bases can do it. But then you create more and more of these code bases, and then, you know, now we've got packages, and how do we make sure the navbar is up to date in all of the packages? And how do we make sure the design system is up to date? And what about versions of React and versions of TypeScript and versions? And like all of those updates, like we've had massive problems of repos, like code bases just not being up to date in their dependencies. And before you know it, you're a major version behind on React and 2 major versions behind on Lodash. And you go to look for docs, and all the docs are talking about things that you can't use in your version anymore. And so lots of, and before, like those updates were one thing we coordinated amongst lots of teams, and now any team can do it, but it means every team has to do it. And so how do we make sure as a company we're not spending years of engineering time just running npm update? And so introducing things like RenovateBot, things like scanning our security vulnerabilities across all of these repos. There's lots and lots of things.
Yeah.
It's nice when it works, but making sure that it's not a lot of work for the teams doing it is what our job is. So.
So this is the thing that might not make the final cut because I don't know if it'll work, but at Culture Amp, we believe in learning faster through feedback. Do you have any feedback for me on my blog post that might have made it 10% better?
Your aspect ratios looked wrong.
Oh,
I don't know if you noticed that.
On the images?
Yeah, on the images. So it might be because I zoomed. I run my browser at 130% zoom normally. So, and it looks okay there, but often when I'm screen sharing, I increase my zoom, and you have got a fixed height and a mixing width. So
that's a dev.to style sheet that I cannot override. So I had that problem, which is why I split that Slack thread into 2 images so it wouldn't be too tall. I guess I have to chop it up some more. Cool, thank you. I'll get that done by the time anyone watches this.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks, Jason.
No worries.